go over to you. So this
Okay.
project is called the 3D Printing and Scanning Center. And it would be housed in the library and has several different components, like Mary's. One is the hardware, which would be a high-quality 3D printer and also material to make 3D scans. And this is a project that Mary and I have been talking about for some time, and it started off with an opportunity that we had earlier this fall to write a grant with an outside agency that was offering a lot of printers to libraries across the country. They were lower quality printers, they're called cubes. They're only like $600 a piece. And I did a little bit of investigating, and they really are low quality, and they will jam up, and they will give you problems. We unfortunately did not get the grant. We wrote for 4 of them, because I learned that you need to have more than one, because they will break down when you need them most, and you need time to fix them. And that's part of the 3D printing, is that you do learn to tinker and make and fix and modify, and that's a part of the job. And the project that we would like to kick off with using a 3D printer is creating fractals for the Fractal Fair. And this is to me.
So I made for a fractal fair, I made a computer software that generates tree fractals with different independent variables. So I'm going to explain each variables briefly. The length determines how big.
We should be high-tech with connecting up.
So the length determines how big the initial branch is, starting at the iteration, so it basically determines how big the fractal is. The limit determines how big the last branch is. It controls the number of iterations, and it determines how fine the fractal appears. The ratio is how much the branch decreases every time. So this decreases by 80%, 50%, and 30%. So it determines how crowded the fractal is. The angle is how much each branch tilts every time it iterates. So these are some interesting images that we generated. So this is the 20-degree angle. This is the 30-degree angle. This is the 45 one with lots of right triangles. This is the 60-degree angle with lots of hexagons appearing in it. This is the 72-degree angle with pentagons. This is the 91 with complete rectangle. And the 180, after the 90, the shapes gradually becomes a triangle as the degree goes on. So this is 108, this is 120, 126, these two are very close together. And finally 135, we have a perfect triangle. And then 144 splits off again, 150 degree, and 180. So these are the fractal shapes that we've been able to generate for our program.
And I asked Sam to come because having a 3D printer would be so helpful to really, make these images more tangible to students. So they can certainly see a visual. He also created an interface that students can play around with. But having a tangible 3D model, I think, just really makes the whole concept a little more complete when we talk about the angle of rotation and sort of those images appearing, the hexagon and pentagon. I also brought another model because students tend, given the Fractal Fair, it actually was just last Thursday, students tend to build models. It's very hard to imagine these images, particularly when we want to think 3D, something that's happening. What I find is students run into issues with construction. This is a very lovely model, it's well constructed. They did go one iteration larger though, and then they run into an issue with pieces starting to break apart a little bit. Whereas with a 3D model, again, I do feel it would be much smaller, but it's it's not susceptible to sort of breaking apart. So this one you can start to see where it loses its bonding properties and stuff. So
Mary, I spoke to this group actually too, and one of the things that they said was, my gosh, if we went to the next iteration, we would have thousands of pieces as well.
Right.
So that became a constraint, which a 3D printer would not necessarily.
In the past, when I've had groups try to construct a model so that it's tangible to really illustrate some properties of increasing perimeter or decreasing area. I've had groups work with cardboard boxes, again, just limited model making skills overall, but they're very willing to at least make the attempt. Last year I did have a group construct models out of origami pieces, which was fabulous. However, there were many, many tiny pieces of folded paper, which took them a long time. So again, I think a 3D model would be really lovely. And then I brought a brochure of another group who constructed a 3D image on the computer, and I'm happy to pass that around if you want. They were not able to construct a model. It was just too difficult, but they generated an image on the computer, and they created pamphlets illustrating the fractal.
So the 3D printer allows everyone to make things that they would not be able to make without this piece of technology. So it really opens up new doors and new ways of expressing learning that we don't have available to us currently. And this is a technology that a lot of people believe that is going to affect us as deeply and completely as the internet. We don't know how, we're still working this out, but we believe it's important enough that we should be offering it to our students, in as many ways as we can. In a structured way in the curriculum, to let students explore, and also on their own. And that's another component of this plan, is that we would suggest to students to have a 3D print club, where they would, this would be extracurricular, where they could just really let their creativity go. And I spent some time, actually a lot of time, with the 3D printing club at Brandeis. It's amazing. Things that these students are making are amazing. And the student there, who was a sophomore at Brandeis, was the president of the 3D printing club. He dropped out, and now he's the lead 3D printing person at Google. And so it's a strong movement that has a lot of potential for the young people.
Do 3D printing and drop out of college.
Yeah, drop out. We're here and then drop out. But it's just there are things that we can do with it that we don't even know that we can do. Like I was listening to Mary and I was thinking, we could make models of the DNA strands. We can do a lot of chemistry with it, because a lot of kids, really need to see and do to understand. It's the experiential part of it. What else would I like to say?
Hopefully segue into ours.
Yes.
And I don't know if you've noticed, but Weavesey actually has talked about 3D printing.
I'm so glad to hear that. And, we're lucky that we have faculty who are willing to put in the hours to learn how to do it and be fascinated by it. Because to me, it's just, I'm a librarian. You wonder why I care about 3D printers. Well, there's a big movement across the country and internationally to have maker spaces in libraries. And to me, this would be the foothold, like the first step, the foot in the door to have a maker space in our school. So this would be a wonderful opportunity for us to have it in our library space. And on this grant I attached, through my time with the 3D Printing Club at Brandeis, I learned that you can make a really cheap 3D scanner just using an Xbox piece. So it's like very maker oriented, and you make your own pieces. When I was there, they were printing cupcakes. They were making, and they learned how to do it by themselves, and they printed the attachment from their 3D printer onto the 3D printer. So you're replicating things that you're doing and modifying your printers by yourself. So it blows my mind whenever I think about it. And they're also, they're printing metal. They're printing in liquids. They're printing, you can create things when you print in two different materials. One of your materials can be water soluble, so you can print your support and then rinse it off later. It's getting so developed. And I got the recommendation for the printer from the director of the lab over at Brandeis. He said it was extremely dependable and also portable. And that would be another part of this, is that I know that there's a lot of interest in a community like Weston to be learning about technologies like this. And you had asked if Mary's project would be available, outside the community, and I would think something like this would definitely have interest outside of high school. And when I was writing my first grant, they really wanted, outside collaboration, and if that is something that was interesting to you, I would really like to pursue that.
large, so not big.
And you're asking for one with this grant?
One,
Because I know that you said that you always want to have two, but you were asking for one right now.
well, we know there's another one coming.
Well, and actually, can Jen, would you speak to this, because clearly they,
So, you can thank Pam, because she's all over this makerspace thing, but every year for auction, we try to find an item that people can raise their paddles while they're there and opt to help fund. And for years, we struggled with finding one item for the entire district that all parents could buy into. And the one year I said, you know what, you don't have to do that, Pam. She came up with this idea for makerspaces. So we actually are looking for, as part of our auction, for parents to fund, we give them the chance to fund a specific thing, which some parents prefer to do, than just a general donation to WeaveSee. So we are on the train. And hoping to get a 3D printer in each of the buildings. That's our goal. We will do our best.
but it does sound like it would be interesting if there were different qualities of them in a way, like
Yeah.
in the elementary schools, maybe it doesn't need to have all the bells and whistles that an Ultimaker 2 might have. But I understand that some of the smaller ones jam and all of that. But
Yeah.
But still, I mean, it's really exciting to hear, because we're going to hear something else in a minute too, which feeds into that as well.
I have to admit, I only get my information from Grey's Anatomy about 3D printers, but
Are they
Yeah.
fast? Organs. It's
Wasn't
well,
that great?
no, there was.
Yeah.
I was telling Pam they did a surgery. Someone has a man has a titanium jaw that they made on a 3D.
It's actually an
printer.
amazing story.
amputees also. They're
Yeah.
making artificial hands and arms.
Okay, you guys have not read my blog, clearly.
No, read Pam's blog.
Teaching
but,
and learning blog.
Is it a quick process? How long does it take to
take 24 hours
yeah,
like on Grey's
like
Anatomy?
Grey's Anatomy. Yes, Grey's Anatomy. How long does it take to print the big triangle there?
It does take several hours, yeah. I think depending on the scale, something like this would probably take, closer to a day, definitely, to print something like this. Something maybe between these two sizes can be done maybe in like a half a day or maybe a little less than that. We actually did have a model printed from a 3D printer, actually that was printed at Brandeis 2 years ago for Fractal Fair of this particular image, and it took, it wasn't this size, but it was, like I said, between these two, it took about a half a day to print, so. It's a little bit of a drawback with the time.
Yeah.
But
You gotta be very organized.
Can you just kind of walk me through, say you have this printer and it's there, I'm a student, can I use it? Is there a line, is there a side,
Logistics, how does it
Exactly.
work?
They would have to, in the library, they would need to consult with me. If it were
Okay.
part of a class, I would be co-teaching it, to help get the learning in there to learn how to use it.
Is there plans that it's gonna be part of specific classes and?
It's, right now, it's slated, the grant right now includes honors pre-calc as the curriculum piece. And
For the
it's
fair.
for the Fractal
Right.
Fair, which is a wonderful way to introduce it because it has such a high profile. And one of the things that teachers are saying is that when students see other students, observe other
this is gonna be
students doing
huge.
this, it will make an
Well, that's-
impression and it will make them want to use it too.
Absolutely. I just wanted to know that everyone, everyone's obviously not gonna get a chance, but just kind of what your plan is.
I think the other thing, Debbie, is that sometimes people don't know, like, when we were talking about this on the board too, that not everybody knew what it was to begin with.
Right.
And I think sometimes we don't, as teachers, necessarily know how we would incorporate it, exactly what we would
Okay.
do, until you start seeing it, and then you say, oh my gosh, that would be the perfect answer for whatever I was thinking about. And I hadn't thought of that before.
And then what would happen is with this project, we're gonna run through it, so we're gonna get all of the mistakes in there, we'll figure out, where all the hiccups are, and then that will make us that much easier to roll it out to other classes.
Are they hard to use?
I think they're not hard to use, you just turn them on. You have to make your.
It's not like that copy
Sam
machine in
does,
the
yeah.
office.
Sam, have you done this? We have about another minute and a half
I'm
at the
sorry.
most.
I personally used a 3D printer. It was donated from my friends in this grade's dad, and I'm a dean to the middle school. we use it in robotic club for like small like pieces, and I would say like it's hard to like get it running at first, but like once you get it running, it's pretty simple to like teach and learn. It's like basically inputting the piece into the 3D printer, and it just lines up the material that's printing, and it just prints it.
And that printer is a couple generations old, and I know that every iteration it becomes much more user friendly. I was at the NSTA conference last year, and they had 3D printers that people were walking up to and typing stuff in and printing, and things were being printed. Clearly not, really elaborate pieces, but it has become a lot more user friendly. And you can go to Newbury Street and do the same thing.
I was gonna say that, there's that store there now, right on the
Make a
corner.
box.
The question I have is, are you gonna have a log jam, since it takes some time to print, for the fact that you've got this oriented towards a certain event with many students?
Right,
And
right.
this is one of those classes where there's multiple sections of the class. Is one printer enough?
Two might be better.
Okay, so that said, I think that's a great question. Not everybody's going to choose to 3D print their fractal.
That's the other
Right.
thing, right?
But the other thing is, these are movable, and we could borrow them from other buildings for that particular event too. I mean, if we're funding 5, if we get that kind of funding, that would be amazing, and then we
God
could.
willing,
Grandmother
I wonder if
was
there's a
from
way
your
that we
lips.
can even print them remotely and just go check on them,
Yes.
you know?
And for younger children or people who are not coders, you can actually download code for the programming for some whatever it is that you're creating, and play with the code. You don't have to have written the whole thing from scratch, which is really exciting too, because we may not all become computer experts in terms of coding, but learning how to read it is a new literacy. Making small tweaks.
Well, the level of code that was demonstrated at this year's Fractal Fair alone was unbelievable. I mean, in the 6 years that I've been teaching honors pre-calc, the amount of students that have a background in programming has completely gone up, and it is becoming much more sophisticated now. So certainly having an understanding of the language from the student's perspective is really helpful. And these projects, at least for the Fractal Fair, are done in groups of 3. So, for a class of, 20, it's only really me. And again, that's not even that all 6 or 7 projects are going to be using or printing a 3D model.
And you can print at night too.
Right, exactly, yeah.
With a baby monitor so we can watch it.
Jams at 2 a.m. Who's here to?
Yeah, you turn it in, it's like a big flower.
We're calling Alita. Thank you so much.
Thank you.